Okay, so introduction to Shakespeare's thought. On the whiteboard behind me, I've scribbled down a number of different things. I wanted to give just a general sense of periods in Shakespeare's writing. I'm just dealing with his dramatic works here. He writes, he has a whole significant sonnet sequence and other significant plays, other significant literary endeavors as well. But we are studying Shakespeare as a dramatist here. Let me give you a few details about his life. So born in Stratford in 1564 in the Renaissance period, right in the middle of the 16th century, in a time of enormous artistic outpouring. It's the golden age. It's Elizabethan, the Elizabethan age, Queen Elizabeth. And the Renaissance is happening. And of course, we also have that thing called the Reformation. Both of them in the background for Shakespeare's England. The Reformation is happening, ongoing, while he is working and writing. And yet the Renaissance is also a potent aspect of the period. He did learn Latin in school. Born in 1564 in Stratford, England. In 1582, he married Anne Hathaway. So when he was 18. Yes, not the Hollywood actress Anne Hathaway, but the more famous and important one, which people don't know about, but she's named herself after. And they had two children, one whose name was Hamlet and the other was Juliet. And his son Hamlet died, which probably led to a dark turn in his thought. We'll skip over that for now. Between the ages of 1585 and 1592, we don't know a great deal about Shakespeare, but in the 1590s, he becomes a literary figure. Now, some say there are theories out there that Shakespeare didn't actually write his plays. That was the Earl of Oxford or some other characters. There's a lot of discussion about that right now. And there's some decent arguments to be made for alternative characters besides this man from Oxford. At any rate, I'll leave that to one side, and because that opens a whole can of worms, and I'm not even interested in the topic particularly, at least from a literary perspective. I think there is a individual behind the place, whether it is this man Shakespeare, who was born in Stratford or not. But in the 1590s, Shakespeare becomes a literary figure. He writes in 1593-94 a work called Venus and Adonis. And he obtains at the same time royal patronage. So he becomes one of the Queen's men. This is still in the Elizabethan period. So Shakespeare lies between two monarchs. This is also important. So sometimes you will hear of Shakespeare as an Elizabethan dramatist. Sometimes he'll be called a Jacobean dramatist. That's because James, who succeeds to the throne, is Jacob in Latin. So the Jacobean period is the period of drama that happens under James I, for whom we owe, or to whom we owe in some ways, the King James Bible. But in that same period, the theater that in which he worked was very much caught up in scandal. It was associated with all manner of illicit activity. So just to give you an illustration, it was very common for prostitutes to frequent the theaters of the day. So the critique of the theater, which came from the Puritans, and the Puritans were not a religious, weren't in one aspect of Protestantism. You could find Puritans amongst the Anglicans and the Presbyterians and eventually the Baptists. They were all influenced by Puritan ideas, and Puritan is just simply being more consistently, coherently Christian, marked by a piety and a holiness, and a belief that holiness is the way to bless a country and to improve it. And they were very much critics of the theater. And they remained there throughout Shakespeare's day, and you can see him responding to critiques of that. Milton will write in a later period and will be still feeling the weight of pressure from the puritanical wing of the church. And they critique it not only for what is portrayed on stage, but what happens around the theater as well. And there's a lot of children being born outside of wedlock, venereal disease, etc., that goes with this. So the criticism isn't as crazy as Puritans hate art. Milton was a Puritan. Milton did not hate art. The great writer in the English language, in my view. He's a Puritan. You'll find the same, you could say the same thing about Herbert in some ways. Some dispute with me that he's a Puritan. I can see the influence of Puritanism, even if you don't want to call himself that. At any rate, he works at the Globe Theatre from 1599. And the Globe Theatre has been rebuilt in the last couple of decades in London. You can visit it now. It's a reconstructed version of the Globe Theatre of Shakespeare's day. If you do go to it, you will find a representation of the theater that Shakespeare would have presented in. So on the ground floor, the commoners stand right in front of the stage. They're all gathered up in numbers, and of course they have to stand. No seats for them, and they're all close, and they can come right up to the stage, and they can crowd together. You can get a lot of them in. And but on the other hand, if you're shorter, well, you can't see above the person in front of you, so it's not great. Problematic. Behind that, in the seats in the gallery, in the round, are the nobility, and there's a royal box as well. When Shakespeare is speaking to his audience, he has in mind different groups in his theater that represent the different groups of the republic or the monarchy in front of him. He sees the royal, he sees the aristocrats and the wealthy merchants, and then he sees the common people, and he speaks to each of them, the three diverse groups. And he thinks they all have a role to play, and they all need to be dealt with fairly and justly. So his plays are didactic, and they're engaging in politics at all points in a subtle way. He's not a political writer. That's not his main aim. He thinks that politics is part of human life, and human hierarchy is part of human life. And it reflects the hierarchy that exists on a macrocosmic level in the natural hierarchy, which we see between the sun and the planets. So the planets revolve around the sun. The sun not only gives light to all of them, and light and growth, but they revolve around it in the same way that the courtiers, whether they're the nobles or the commoners, they revolve around the court as the king as well. So the king is often compared in Shakespeare's plays to being like the sun. Right? So Shakespeare is very much of a monarchist. You'll not get any hints of anything other than monarchy in Shakespeare's plays. He sees that there is a social hierarchy which is necessary, and God has instituted. When you come 50, 60 years later to Milton's time, he's going to dispute this. And he will say that the natural form, or rather the biblical form of government, is not monarchy, but rather republicanism, based on texts that are discovered, Hebrew texts in the mid-17th century. And they're going to make arguments on the basis of biblical understandings for a Hebrew republic. In fact, there's a book called The Hebrew Republic, which I commend to you if you're interested, which makes exactly this case, that the ideas in the 17th century are not led by money or power per se, but more by biblical ideas, that the proper form of government that God endorses and therefore blesses is a republican one, rather than a monarchy. But that lies 50 years, 60 years after this. Shakespeare will entertain no such idea. Both Milton and Shakespeare are both going to endorse hierarchy. It's just who lies at the top. The Catholics of the day will follow the natural hierarchy that Shakespeare presents, say that the king does. Here's the guy. He's the guy. Those that are in the Republican ranks will say that, well, God never wanted a king. And in fact, endorses a disbursement of power amongst elders and so forth. And there's a different way of constituting that. But I'll leave that argument for the Hebrew Republic, and Nelson provides the documents for it. If you're very interested, you could look into that. And also look in terms of politics, look at the Putney debates. You think that an army would not be having debates over government and the best form of biblical government on the battlefield, but there are exactly that in the Putney debates amongst Cromwell's Republican army. Should it be a democracy? Should it be a monarchy? Should it be a republic? That's what they're discussing. What army ever had those sorts of discussions? Well, Cromwell's army did. Very interesting. And it will spill over into American discussions and American politics, founding fathers and all that. They're all aware of these things. But in Shakespeare's day, as I say, he will be following the understanding that the king is a representative of God. But he's not God, but he's a representative of God and answers to God, and answers to God alone. He's not elected. He has a special influence and sway. So the son is akin to the king, and that is akin to reason. These three things then. There's a natural hierarchy, which is the macrocosmic view. There is a hierarchy within the person. That's the microcosmic view. Everyone's a little world. John Donne says, I'm a little world made cunningly, with elements and an angelic sprite, angelic spirit, one of his holy sonnets. And what should rule him is reason, God's viceroy. This is like the king within you. Your reason should be governing your passions. Your passions are like the commoners. They need to be governed. And they will be governed by your will, which will follow virtue. C.S. Lewis's work, Men Without Chests, what's it called? The Abolition of Man. First chapter will be called Men Without Chests, and he observes that modern education gets rid of the training of the passions by the moral virtues. We've just got rid of that function altogether. We just let people be led by their passions. Well, in Scripture, people who are led by their passions are pagans, or of course they're going to do godless things. So if you remove that governance function of education, the will is not going to be able to do it, because you need this element within you, the will led by the moral virtues, to subdue the passions and keep them in the right place. If you're hungry, you don't just eat the whole pie. If you lust after a woman, you can't just take her, or a man, whatever. You can't just do it. You can't. You have to be governed by virtue and use your reason. Your reason will lead you to differentiate the virtues from the vices. And you need to follow that. So you need something to control that. Well, if you remove this from human education altogether, you no longer have education at all. Yes?
If you observe the actual education system, from my observations, they still recognize that there is such a hierarchy in a certain sense, but they decline to teach.
Self-governance. That's correct.
And so they'll simply remove an ungoverned person from the context of people who are better governed. They'll put them in a lower class or some kind of remedial element, and they'll just push them off to the side as though there's nothing we could have ever done to help this person.
Yeah, so this is a great point, and I think you're correct. This is what happens in the education system. So if you don't teach people to govern themselves, they still have to be governed. And the person that governs them then is the person in authority. And they themselves are no longer acting like people that bear the image of God. The only one who bears the image of God then is the ruler, in a sense has authority. But in Scripture, everyone bears the image of God. And so you have to acquaint them with their responsibilities and teach them to govern their passions. You need to control your temper. And how do you do that? Well, you don't just do it by telling them to, stop getting angry. You have to give them tools to govern that, and the virtues help them to do that. Acquaint them with those sorts of things, and they're commended in Scripture. Again, our education removes all of that. I'm not going to even get into the critique of modern education, which I can talk about all day till the cows come home. And I am happy to talk about that subject, but I won't get into it here. But just say here in Shakespeare, he understands that all three elements are part of human nature and need to be brought in conformity with the grand project of following the natural hierarchy of things. The planets don't revolt against the sun. They can't. They're in place. They don't break from their ranks. Discord would follow. Likewise, on the musical scale, I can get into all that sort of stuff as well. When something's out of tune, actually, this is a great quote. Shakespeare, Troilus and Cressida, which we're not looking at. By Ulysses. Let's see if I can. Agamemnon, Nestor, Ulysses. Give me a sec. Unblank. Oh, it's going to take me a second here. Oh, I can get rid of all that. This is from Shakespeare's play, Troilus and Cressida, which reflects his understanding of hierarchy, everything I've just talked about here. And Ulysses is who? Who do you know Ulysses by? This is the Roman name, the Latin name for this figure. I introduced him to first year, first class. Ulysses, the figure of wisdom, speaking within the Greek camp. Ulysses makes the comment of this. And he does it in response to a speech by Agamemnon. Speak, Prince of Ithaca, and beat of less expect that matter needless of importless burden. Divide thy lips, then we are confident when rank Thersites opes his mastic jaws, we shall hear music, wit, and oracle. Expectation on Odysseus. Troy, yet upon his basis, so now he's speaking against the speech that came before this, had been down. It had already fallen. And the great Hector's sword had lacked a master. But for these instances, the specialty of rule hath been neglected. And look, how many Grecian tents do stand hollow upon this plain. So many hollow factions. When that the general is not like the hive to whom the forger shall all repair what honey is expected. It's talking about the if nobility will not act like nobility, how can we expect any honey? Degree being visited, that is hollowed out. Hierarchy, degree, being visited, the unworthiest shows as fairly in the mask. He's thinking about the theater. Everyone wears a mask in the Greek theater. Doesn't matter if the person behind it is of noble character or ignoble character. If it's all just a mask and there's nothing behind it, it's just a pretense. It's you have the office, but you don't have the character that goes with the office. If there is no actual degree and it's just, there's the judge. That person's a judge, that person's a judge, but that's an unjust judge and that's a just judge. Is there no difference? Yes, there is. The heavens themselves, the planets, and this center observe degree, priority, and place. In sister, course, proportion, season, form, office, and custom in all the line of order. And therefore is the glorious planet Sol, the sun, in noble eminence enthroned and sphered amidst the other, whose medicinable eye corrects the ill aspects of planets' evil and posts like the commandment of a king. Note how he's moving from a microcosm to a macrocosm, from a social sphere to from the cosmic sphere, back and forth, seeing proportion in all of these things. And posts like the commandment of a king, sans check to good and bad. But when the planets in evil mixture to disorder wander, what plagues and what portents, what mutiny, what raging of the sea, shaking of earth, commotion in the winds, frights, changes, horrors, divert and crack, rend and deracinate, that they take up the roots of the unity and married calm of states quite from their fixture. Oh, when degree is shaked, which is the ladder to all high designs, then enterprise is sick. How could communities, degrees in schools, and brotherhoods in cities, peaceful commerce from dividable shores, the primogenitive and due of birth, prerogative of age, crowns, scepters, laurels, but by degree stand in place? How would it be possible if degree was not there? Take but degree away. Now, here's the famous lines right here. Take but degree away, untune that string, and hark what discord follows. Each thing meets in mere oppugnancy, lowering the barrier so that everyone comes in. There's no hierarchy, there's no rank, there's no teacher, there's no student, there's no father, there's no son. The bounded waters should lift their bosoms higher than the shores and make a sop of this solid globe. Strength would be lord of imbecility, and the rude son should strike his father dead. Force should be right, or rather right and wrong, between whose endless jar justice resides, should lose their names. And so should justice too. Then everything includes itself in power, power into will, will into appetite. Down, down, down. An appetite and universal wolf so doubly seconded with will and power must make perforce an universal prey, and last eat up himself. Great Agamemnon, this chaos, when degree is suffocate, follows the choking, and this neglection of degree it is that by a pace goes backward with a purpose it hath to climb. So there you go. Whole history of the human race since the French Revolution. On a political level, get rid of the kings, chop off his head, and along with it, get rid of ranks and differences in the name of equality. And by trying to climb upwards, we go downwards. Because again, we only just take away reason and the king. We observe the passions and we let the passions rule us, and as the lowest common denominator, because everybody's ruled by the passions. Yes.
This description has reminded me of Edward VIII, and I wonder if Shakespeare would have been drawing a line between Edward VIII and what followed in England, not really much longer after he resigned his monarchy.
So Edward VIII. So this is taking place. When's Edward VIII?
1936.
Oh, okay. I was going to say. So you're talking about the 20th century.
Yeah, 1936, he abdicated the throne.
Yeah.
And the decade to follow was calamitous, to say the least, for England.
For England.
The whole empire fell from World War II, really.
It's a really interesting observation, the effect of a king, because we tend to think that the monarchy in Britain is irrelevant.
And American republicanism replaced British monarchism in the global Anglosphere because of World War II.
I'm not against republicanism, by the way.
I know, but I'm just saying.
I think that Milton's correct in the republicanism, but it's an interesting observation.
Of Shakespeare, if he were to write the 20th century's play,
yeah, he would. From a monarchist perspective, he would have Edward VIII abdicating his responsibilities, giving the power of the world, as it were, over to the Americans, the Republican Americans. He would probably cast it in those terms. And it's all because of the fall of the King of England, and his abdication of responsibility is marrying the woman he loves, this sort of thing. Following his passions instead of his duty. That's how the royals themselves saw it, right? That sort of, they didn't see it on the political sphere, they didn't get into all that, but that's what they saw that was at stake. And the British themselves understood it in that way. Not necessarily the English or the American Republicans coming in to replace that, but certainly they would see the political, social implications of a private act Oh, that's another thing I need to draw to your attention then. With respect to even the idea of the microcosm and the macrocosm, or the macrocosm and the microcosm, the king himself has two bodies.
Justina, I'm gonna.
Yeah.
I'll do a segment with the outside. I'll selfie hold a camera. And I can just ask you what's been exciting for you in your first coaching manager kickoff meet. Yep, the first week in the role.
That's how you spell it. I might have it wrong.
I'll say we're just excited to have you.
Two bodies.
We'll do a little back and forth.
Which
just the usual song and dance.
To this day, acknowledge it's a medieval theory of kingship. I am England. The king is dead. Long live the king. The royal we.
He does not. He was
Elizabeth,
more concerned with telling me that he made
represent
it to
England. I am England.
Shouldn't have.
Right.
So,
so the king of England, or the queen of England, is the head of the state. She's also a person. She has a family. But insofar as she holds the office of king, has a body that exercises a certain authority outside of her own natural familial body. She has both. She has two heads, as it were. She's the head of state. She's the head of her family. Or he, in the case with Charles III right now. He's the king of England, United Kingdom, and all the territories and so forth. But he's also the head of his family. So this same relationship here between kings and subjects will hold place between a father and his children as well. They'll see the same sort of analogy taking place. In fact, the first play that we're going to look at, A Midsummer Night's Dream, is exactly over this issue. The authority between father and a daughter who's rebelling against him. Shakespeare's going to explore this dynamic. Doesn't mean he sides with the father, by the way. Despite what well, all the plays we're going to look at are exploring the problematic nature. So here's the structure. Shakespeare firmly believes in it, but it's not quite so simple as he endorses, well, this is right. So if you are rebelling against your father's commands, that you're in the wrong. No, the father can have diseased thoughts, and he can himself be rebelling against God in the way he conducts himself in relation to his family. They still owe duty to him, but on the other hand, he owes duty to God. And at what point is he going to fall from grace and create a civil war in his ranks because of his injustice and his refusal to give natural rights or prerogatives to his people? Remember, this is the country of Magna Carta, which gives certain privileges, and there's a place of free speech there, and responsibility of the king to his subjects. So that it's not so simple as, well, here's the order, you follow the orders, and he's in charge, so you do what he says. It's never, Shakespeare's never so simplistic as all that. I'm just saying this hierarchy he affirms so strongly. I looked at that passage there from Troilus and Cressida. I think it's a magnificent speech, by the way, really, really helpful. Not just Shakespeare will write this, John Donne will write it on the first anniversary, an anatomy of the world. He appeals to the same sort of thing. But note that he did it in terms of discord and tune. And again, that reflects the harmony of things, the harmonious nature of the created order, which is reflected in music. And so music is a significant part of education.
Well, that happened with
and a significant part of worship,
the TC availability form,
and a significant part of life. And if you change the music, you're doing something other than just simply doing something of personal preference. Something's happening. Music is very social media. Very social. People have strong views on music. Do they have a view that accords with this view in the music? I rather think not. Music of our day does this. I mean, that's what it provokes. And even the language will refer to the passions and so forth, but even the beat, or the lack of a beat, the discord, the disorder, it's purposefully agitating. Is that a godly thing to do? So again, you'll get it within context of church services, you'll get in old school congregation, while the oldest school, they don't have any music at all. Metrical psalms, which, by the way, would have been the way that church services were conducted in the Church of England until the 19th century. They sung metrical psalms without musical accompaniment, as has been the case since the church from the beginning. shock, horror.
Right.
We just started introducing
But those
Psalms.
No, they shouldn't.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So there's the debate amongst Christians. Does God ordain the means by which we're to praise him? And those that fall on the regulatory principles of worship will say, yes, he does. It's called the Psalms. So we want to sing to God, sing his praises. We sing the songs he's given to us. That's the Psalter. Nothing else. No music other than what perhaps is Scripture mentions the Old Testament, certain types of instruments and so forth. So there's a little debate even within that. But some in the Protestant fold will go back to that. Evangelicalism post John Wesley will include hymns within that. That's where most people are at. They're gonna, the old fashioned is you like
That's
hymns. Now we have what we call choruses, which are a varying degree of orderliness and goodness. Some are more tolerant of that than others. But again, this ought to be kept in mind when thinking about music and what it does, because music moves the passions. And does it move them rightly is the question. Yes.
Chicken tenders and salad.
The more highly doesn't reject the previous level.
No, it conforms to it.
Looks like someone like shook the box upside down.
Oh no.
Yeah, you're right, and so you dispense
We
with
had a
it.
sushi order come like that. It was a disaster.
As well as the other levels together against another level for the sake of the passion.
There should be a course.
I do.
Hey.
Yeah. So anyway, this isn't about church music and so forth, but it's the principles that are here. There are certain principles that Shakespeare are inherent in Shakespeare's worldview that I think we can observe still govern and are still at least worthy of considering. I'm going to erase all this, and so I'm going to put on the board some works that I think you will find of particular use here. And I put them in the...
They send it.
Okay, would you put your JK on a bus?
On the course. No. BMW Tilliard's The Elizabethan World Picture. Very useful. I give a little summary here on the course of that. Brief and illuminating account of the ideas of world order prevalent in the Elizabethan age and later. Among his topics, angels. Shakespeare will refer to angels as well in his works. These are the messengers between God and man. So there's a certain... The idea of the stars and fortunes he will talk about. The analogy between a microcosm and a macrocosm, I talked about that a fair bit. The idea of the four elements and the four humors. I'll get to that in 2 seconds. I'll have a slide for that. The sympathies, the correspondences, and the cosmic dance. The cosmic dance. The Trinity in the cosmic dance. And there's a harmony and an order, and there's a beauty, and there's a celebration that goes on in all things, which is so important when we come to consider the romances that we're going to spend the first 3 classes on. There is a marriage feast between the Lamb of God and his bride that is eternally being celebrated. And in heaven, in the book of Revelation, they hear the song of the Lamb and of Moses, right? Of Moses and of the Lamb. They hear a song and it's being sung.
It's nice.
That inaudible song that's being sung in heaven is to be replicated here on earth in an anticipatory fashion. Yes.
Well, just to touch on that briefly, something I found really interesting.
What was the weather like in Portland?
Exodus.
It was rainy
Was when
for the first
men
week
and
we were
women
there.
began singing
Yeah,
and women
but then
began,
there were days
dancing
where
and
you get
playing
half the
tambourine.
day of
Yes.
sun,
And
and
to
then
me,
the
I
other half
think
rainy.
what seems to be happening
But
is we're
then
representing like the
midway through our month, it started getting
dancing
nice.
around the men is what seems to be.
Who's the author of that song?
How was the weather
Miriam,
in Canada?
right? Moses'
Was it
sister,
also
right?
rainy?
And what's it about? It's celebrating the conquest of
Yeah. Hot
the
and
beast of Egypt and God's victory over it.
My
The same
dad
sort of
claims the
song that's
hottest
being sung
summer he's witnessed
in the book of
since
Revelation of
in
the
40 years.
defeat of
They said
Babylon the Great by
since
the heavenly
he moved to his
Jerusalem.
house
There's
to
it's the same
my
sort
dad's
of
grass
song,
across the road.
same sort of
It had turned to a dirt pile. Is nuts.
sentiment
Grass hadn't seen
being
water
expressed there. The
for
victory.
months.
God has brought about the Exodus. He's defeated his enemies. He's cast them down.
Yeah, it was down. Oh yeah, I heard
And we
about it every
celebrate
day.
in the light of that. Much
The
more so
attached water
clear
level's low.
in the crucifixion, the resurrection,
on
the
the bay.
ascension. Same sort
What's
of
that?
song of victory. In terms of Elizabethan beliefs, in terms of
Hopefully not nearby, 'cause
physiology,
I drink the
he will
water
refer to
near my
this. I'm not going to
parents'
spend too much time
Oh
on
my
this.
gosh, they just dumped sewage into that.
They
Like,
have an
raw
ancient
sewage into
Doesn't
the
make it
theory
over
of
to my end.
physiology
Oh,
that
you're
has
going on.
not
I mean,
yet
David
been
Cell is disgusting,
modernized, as it were,
That's not too far.
going all the way
It's
back
not
to
too
ancient
far.
Greece.
I've never swam.
Sounds a lot like
It's
Chinese
fuzzy.
use as well.
Like,
The
you
the
stand
different
in it, you see the fuzzy things
elements
floating
and
around
how you
because
treat
my kids
illnesses.
look at it
It's
and I'm like,
caused by an imbalance.
Yeah,
You treat it with hot or
Trying
cold
to
or
explain
moist or
yourself.
dry.
Don't
That
drink
sort of.
the water.
4 chief liquids of the human body: blood, phlegm, yellow bile, and black bile, sometimes called the humors. And in accordance with that, you will also, and so here are the 4 elements: earth, air, fire, and water. There's 4. And there are temperaments that go with that. People are naturally temperamental.
Oh no.
The only thing that's temperamental is people that are choleric. They lose their temper. Or temperamental might be that they're always mopey, like Eeyore, or like Puddleglum. Or although he's phlegmatic more than anything, Puddleglum is. But choleric, you lose your temper. But all of these are tempers, and they are naturally there. People are inclined to a certain temperament. It explains psychology. It's the Elizabethan explanation for psychological differences. They explain it down to physiology and to the composition of this. So how do you treat these things? You treat them often by letting blood. They have too much blood in them, so they're always, cutting, letting the blood out. When somebody's sick, we better let the blood. Well, no wonder they die. But anyway, right? But there's an order in this, and there are characteristics that he will describe these. These also depend, by the way, not only on the microcosmic thing, but the macrocosmic. What star were you born under? In what year? Under whose reign? In which country? Those will all affect yourself as a person. It's not just your choices. You are not an autonomous entity. You are a product of your age and time and date. Shakespeare sees everything related and influencing. And they will point to signs in the heavens of important births, which again seems biblical. It seems like the pagan world of the ancient Greeks and Romans, and actually every pagan country thinks the same thing. They'll see a significance to days. What day were you born on?
But you're allowed.
Under what
You're allowed
sign?
to have on it.
That sort of thing.
Not the driver.
My kid was terrified.
Oh.
He was
Everything that's not egalitarian.
I feel that way when I get pulled over too.
Why did they stop you? Just random
They were
checks?
just going boat to boat.
Oh.
Like we were anchored and we were about to throw like one of those lily pad swim mats.
Yeah, this is a new weird thing. Generation the X, Y, Z, A. No.
Checking for life jackets.
Checking for life jackets, safety gear.
I know. Effectively, they are.
License.
It's reintroducing ideas which they think are ridiculous, but now they're under their control. So that's what's going on. It's like we are giving order.
No,
We ridicule the idea of the ages, and now we're reintroducing them in, but they're now our designations, so they make more sense.
Like something under a certain age.
The idea as well, because
I mean, with all of the kids and adults that drowned this summer in Ontario, like they should have them on.
You know how they engineer it? They introduce new music every 10 years.
Yeah.
Every day it was
So
like
do I.
a new.
Well, the one bozo in Scarborough that gave the on the Sea-Doo without the life jacket, unable to swim. I mean, you're just
What are you thinking?
like, if you can't swim, put a life jacket on.
It's the same with people with canoeing.
I know.
Why are you canoeing and not wearing a life jacket if you don't know how to swim?
Because that's gonna be a challenge with the life jacket on. If it flips over on you and you can't get it over, like, yeah, you should. I don't wear a life jacket when I canoe. I sit on.
Yeah,
it.
it's okay. I prefer
I
biblical,
should.
like the
Well, I
number
don't.
40
I don't.
as a generation. Number 40 seems to be
And I'm
significant
the
to
only
me.
adult in there.
And you can talk about that in biblical numbers.
I
There's
have
a
to
repeated
say
reference to
him.
number 40 as a generation.
You don't want to get
generation
knocked
dying
out
in
and
the
not have a
wilderness
life
is the word
jacket on.
Yeah.
and 80 years in exile. There are significances to the number 40 in terms of human
No, yeah, I
reforming.
agree.
I
It would
know
be a
that in
little
our
nervous.
day we're trying to
It's
make it
wobbly.
a
If you didn't
shorter
know how to
space
swim,
of
you'd
time so
probably
they
be
can bring
pretty
about
nervous
change
on
at a
it.
more rapid rate and cause dissension between the various generations, which allows, again, the very same thing that we talked about, the passions being divided from reason. People who are confused, this is my music, I can listen to it privately. It's a different music than yours. We can't connect at all as human beings. One generation, the next generation's now 10 years or whatever. There's nothing to harmonize and bring them together. There's nothing, right? So it's just, then they're going to be ruled. If they can't rule themselves and there's nothing to unify them, they will be ruled. And the rule will not necessarily, in fact, you can be certain it will not be in the interest of those being ruled.
It's great when we rent it once every couple of years and like do something special. And I'm like, I'm not sure. As the person who holds the boat license, I want to pay for it, or
Half
B,
our
want their
congregation
responsibility.
is about the age of 65.
Mhm.
Half of our congregation is in their 20s and 30s.
Mhm.
And we're missing everyone between the age of 40 and 65.
Oh yeah, I'm part of the missing gap. Yeah, I see that in churches. There was a couple decades when it was just that boom. People are looking for leaders in our day. There are none. You know why? That's why right there. Like at the over 65s, there's some solid people there, actually. The under 40s, there's some solid people there. My generation, good luck. There's not a lot there. Anyway, you might want to explore why that is. That's a very interesting phenomenon. That's why people look for leaders and they're not finding any. Because my age, this is where leaders are. Like 50s, like late 40s, 50s, 60s, like 45 and up. That's you're mature. Actually, after the age of 40, biblical number there.
Here's your rental
Then
license
you're
for the
mature.
day away
And
you
you're
go.
leading your family. You have a certain wisdom. You understand the times. Yeah, so that's one of the reasons we're in such terrible trouble right now. There's so little leadership in that range. It's all over the place. Corporate world, church world,
Diddy.
educational sphere. It's a real problem. Yep. So that's that. So the temperament, and that's a link you can see for yourself. This book by Isabel Rivers is fantastic. I can't recommend it to you more highly. It is absolutely terrific.
Need a good pair.
And it is, as it says, a student's guide, so it's written for students. And I wish I'd come across this when I first studied Shakespeare, because it is really, really terrific. And it will cover, as it says, 13 different topics here, from the Golden Age and the Garden of Eden. And I'll just look at one chapter here to show you how it works. And it will cover the pagan gods, the influence of Platonism and Neoplatonism on Shakespeare and his age, the influence of Stoicism, views of history. That one's really interesting, because there's a biblical view of history, as well as the progressive view of history, which we're all acquainted with, the secular view of history. The Bible itself has a certain view of history. Okay, but you can see this for now. I'll try and do that. I don't know why that is. That's weird. Okay. So let me go to views of history, since I said it was so interesting. Didn't work in clicking on it. Okay, so I'll just go down to 55 then.
There's a lot of like rental places and things like that. There's
They
a
do
lot
good
of
for
people
you.
out there who should
It
not
is wonderful.
be out there.
It's such
No,
a useful book, because it takes you to the sources of this and gives you the quotation. You don't have to search for them. This is I'm going way too far. This is in Reformation, theology, Protestant views of Rome. Reformation, Counter-Reformation, that's too late.
It's good as the roast beef. Yeah.
Cosmology, I'll just do with cosmology.
Yeah.
Come on.
No, but sauce is on the side. Maybe that's why.
Oh, now I'm going to do history, despite just saying I'm not going to do history. Classical views of history. Okay, so gives us an extended discussion of it in a prefatory fashion, in a very concise and, I would say, very sage discussion of the topic. So views of history. Very complicated. 3 traditions: historiography, classical, Christian, and British. All three are important. They're not the same. There's overlap. A Venn diagram, there's sometimes a significant overlap, but there's going to be a significant difference. The Christian view of history is going to be very different than the classical. Classical is the 4 ages. And history is largely repeating itself, although in Virgil, it has a sense of moving to a golden age. It's got a very unusual in that sense. The Christian, though, is eschatological. It has a beginning, it has an end, it has a purpose, it has a trajectory, a teleology, an eschatology. There's a conclusion in history. The British is different again. And yet they draw on all these things themselves. And she will go to the sources then. She mentions Herodotus and Livy and Polybius and Thucydides and the Roman historians Sallust and Tacitus and so forth. And she will quote, let's 3 and 4 here. And then she'll go on to the Christian views and the ones that they get in the book of Daniel and the book of Revelation and all of those influences. So she gives a fantastic discussion of this and then moves on to give you the sources, which she's giving. So number 16 here on the screen here in dark is number 16 in the notes. It's like a footnote, and she'll give you a lengthy quotation of it. So there's one. She gets it from Thucydides, 2 from Polybius, 4 from Livy, 5 from Tacitus, then the biblical views of history. The Psalmist, book of Daniel, book of Acts.
Oh my God.
It's not exhaustive. I would have liked her to put Deuteronomy 32 down there, the forming of a nation.
But don't
But
worry, if you
anyway,
fish without a fishing license, they can
but
take
it's
your
a
boat, your
terrific
truck,
source book.
your
So I
everything.
highly recommend it as well as a place
they don't
where
like
if
that.
you want to explore an idea thematically and see how it evolves over time. And
Or you
develops.
got one extra
Really,
muskie
really
in your,
useful.
or one extra
Shakespeare
bass,
certainly
you're done.
the Renaissance
Like,
draws on the
enjoy the
past.
find.
Counting the
Renaissance
rods,
means
the
a
number of
rebirth
people
of
and
classical
license.
learning.
Oh.
They go back to the sources. Reformation means they do the same thing, but now they go back to the sources in Scripture. It's the same movement in the church as it was in culture. The two are a sort of a renaissance, and now they fuse together in this period and in the 17th century. I think that's it. No, I didn't want that. Any comments or questions? If not, I'm going to pause here for break, and I will bring us to look at A Midsummer Night's Dream. Any other comments or questions? We did a little digression there, which I like.
We're gonna have to change our Starbucks.
Adds value, I think.
York region.
Maybe you don't agree.
Oh no.
Okay, if not, let's take a break then, and we